Hello and welcome to Thursday's special interview here on Viking.TV with me, Anne Diamond. Now, I don't know about you, but when you're traveling, and particularly when you're aboard a cruise ship as wonderful as a Viking ocean or river ship, you become inspired. Sometimes to literature that you hadn't thought of before, sometimes to try and become a bit more creative yourself, like wanting to play music, compose, or paint. And that's certainly something that I wanted to do on a recent Viking river cruise in Portugal. I just couldn't believe the spectacular countryside surrounding us, the incredible valleys with their almost perpendicular vineyards, the towns and cities that you felt you could stand on your balcony and almost just reach out and touch. You could almost look inside people's bedrooms. It was incredible and certainly inspired me to want to go home and paint immediately. Well, that is one thing, inspiration here on Earth. But this week is Space Week here on Viking.TV. And my next guest knew that she would experience a very similar instinctive feeling when she was going to go on board a space shuttle mission to the ISS, the International Space Station, back in 2009. She was a NASA mission specialist. She took what she was allowed for her own downtime, a small artist's watercolour set. And it sparked a vision in her that has made her both a renowned astronaut and a well-known artist in an extraordinary field. The painting that she first created, the first done in space, that's the picture that she worked from, and then the painting that she created, as I said, the first done in space, is now displayed at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. She'll tell us all about it, how and when she painted it, and indeed how many miles above Earth she was, where she painted it. So let's meet from her home, I think in Florida, an astronaut, an artist, a mom who spent over 100 days in space aboard the International Space Station and has had a distinguished 28-year career in NASA. So welcome to Nicole Stott. Hello there, Nicole.
Hi, Anne. Wonderful to be here with you.
Oh, it's lovely. And am I right? Your home is in Florida?
Yes, St. Petersburg, Florida. So on the West Coast, kind of Tampa Bay area.
Oh, wonderful. I love the study behind you. You've got so many things I'm afraid you're going to have to introduce us to a bit later on. But tell us first about that amazing painting, the first ever done in space, a watercolor. How did it happen? How did you paint it?
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you to one of my support people on the ground that was working with me before flying, because on my own, I don't think I would have ever thought to bring a watercolor kit with me to space. So every chance I get, I thank my friend Mary Jane Anderson, who was the person responsible for helping me get all the stuff I was going to take to space ready to go. And that was, the one pair of pants I was going to have for 3 months up there, my checklists and all the stuff that we need to actually live and work there. But she reminded me that I would actually be living there and I would have some free time. And maybe there was something I liked doing on Earth that I could bring with me to space. And so that's where bringing the little watercolor kit came in. And you can see it in that picture. You can see it on the back wall. It's kind of a white cover with the little colored squares there. And this actually is the only picture I have of painting in space. The only one. I wish I would have activated my brain cell to videotape the whole experience or something, because I think it would have been just a wonderful way to describe what it's like to live in space, where everything floats and you've got to keep track of your stuff and things just behave differently. And that was certainly true of watercolor painting as well. Yeah.
Well, I know we're going to have so many artists or budding artists watching at the moment. How difficult is it to actually paint with watercolors? Because you have to have water and you're constantly, well, when you do it on Earth, you're constantly dabbing in water and dabbing on paint and then going for that outline. Is that much more difficult in zero gravity?
Well, I think the thing that was really wonderful about it was I try not to think like everything in space. It's all a little bit different. And I always try to consider those things like they were part of the adventure, right? And that you'd want it to be a little different when you're in space than it is here on Earth. Everything floats, right? So we don't have cups of water to dip our brush into. So I would squeeze, we have these drink bags that we use that have like a little straw on the end. And so I would just squeeze out little balls of water from the straw in the drink bag and then take my brush, to dip into the ball of water. And because things behave differently, like surface tension, that's what allows us to even have floating balls of water. It was really weird. I mean, I remember taking the brush and moving the tip towards the ball of water. And even before the tip of the brush touched the water, it's like the water wanted to move onto the end of the brush. And then I was like watching this floating ball of water on the end of the brush that you had to carefully move to the paint. And then the paint kind of attracted the water to it, and you mushed it around, and then you pulled this colorful ball of water off. And it was just a lot of this, like looking at it like, wow, that's different. And then painting became more about using the brush to drag the colored ball of water along the paper
Yeah.
versus touching the brush to the paper. Because if I touched the brush to the paper, the whole blob of color water just would go into the paper at one time. And so I found myself having to start over and over a couple times. And now I wish I would have saved those mistakes. I think that would have been such a fun thing to have now. But yeah, it was
Oh, yeah.
all just kind of learning how to use the environment
Yeah.
as
I
you're
wish
painting.
you'd videoed it. It sounds
I know.
extraordinary. But tell us what the wave is, because first of all, you were dealing basically with something you'd seen from space. Did you take the picture yourself?
I did. I took the picture myself, and that was one of my favorite things was to float in the window, look for surprising new things, which popped up every time you looked out the window. You really didn't have to look hard to find something surprising and beautiful. And this was a tiny little chain of islands on the northern coast of Venezuela called Las Rocas. And if you're floating just right and you're looking through the window, it looked to me already like somebody had taken their hand with a big paintbrush and painted a wave on the ocean. And I remember just being, I don't know, just kind of getting sucked into that view and using the camera to try to zoom in and look at it even closer. And I like almost immediately knew that that would be the place that I would paint when I finally was going to paint. And of course, at 17,500 miles an hour going around the planet, which is about 5 miles a second, you can't really, plein air painting. You're not going to sit in front of the window and paint
Yeah.
what you see out the window. So I did have to take a picture to print out to reference for the actual painting.
Yeah, just to remind us all, at that orbit, how many times do you go around the Earth? How many sunrises and sunsets do you see in what we would call a day?
Yeah, we travel around the Earth every 90 minutes, so 16 times a day, which means about every 45 minutes or so, we get a really just gorgeous sunrise or sunset out the window. Yeah, it's one of the, I don't know, it's one of the like things that just gets in your brain about flying in space are those multiple sunrises and sunsets a day.
Yeah, I mean, it must be incredible. But as you said, you can't ask those islands to stay still for you.
Yeah,
So you have to take a picture and paint from the picture.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you were a little girl, did you want to be an astronaut or an engineer or an artist or what? Where did this all come from?
It's funny because when I was a little girl, I don't know if I knew what I wanted to be, right? I know that I developed a love for flying along the way. My parents very thankfully shared what they loved with me. My mom was a nurse, and she also was a very creative person. And I grew up in the 60s and 70s where at that time, my mom was doing things like hooked rugs and macrame and pottery and, stuff like that. And she would bring myself and my sister along with her to do those things. And she was also the one that would get me to ballet lessons or to softball practice. If I was going to do those things, it was because of her. And she also made it possible for us as a family to get out to the airport where my dad was most of the time, building and flying small airplanes. And I developed a love for that myself. And I think in particular, a love for how things fly. I wanted to know how things fly. And in parallel with that, I'm old enough that I have vivid memory of with my family watching that first moon landing. And and I think just even at 6 or 7, that's a really extraordinary thing. right? I had no sense of that being a possibility for me then at all. I just knew it was something that was really cool. I should be impressed by it. I should be in awe of it. And I was. And it wasn't until much later, after I had also discovered that if you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly?
Yeah.
And growing up in Florida with the Kennedy Space Center there, we had the chance to witness those rocket ships flying. And I knew I wanted to work for NASA. And
So
I didn't.
how did you get into NASA? In what way? As an engineer or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the astronaut thing, that was kind of out there, out there in a number of ways. One, in that I wasn't thinking about working for NASA because I wanted to be an astronaut. It was more like, man, they're getting ready to start flying space shuttles again. I want to be part of all that. And so when I graduated from college, that's what I applied right to NASA at Kennedy Space Center, wanted to work on the space shuttle program. And I knew the International Space Station program was coming along. And I wanted to be part of getting those vehicles ready for astronauts to fly. And I mean, it wasn't until probably 9 into the 10 years of working there where I had watched astronauts come through as we're getting the vehicles ready for them to fly. And I thought, man, maybe that's something I could consider. Because up until that point, I thought, oh man, astronaut, that's something other special people get to do. Why would they ever pick me? Why should I ever consider that? I'll watch these other special people do it. I'll help get the vehicles ready. And when I started thinking about it, I didn't, I mean, I reached out to people I considered to be my mentors, and some of whom were on that ship with us, by the way. I think and did nothing more than ask them if I should even consider it. And very thankfully, and believe me, I thank them every time I see them. All they did was encourage me to do the one thing in the whole process that I had total control of, which was to pick up the pen and fill out the application. And
Get it if
honestly,
you don't
without
try
their
for it.
encouragement, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it on my own. I would have just second guessed myself the whole way, talked myself right out of that really wonderful opportunity to even be considered. And uh, yeah, I am so thankful to them.
So when
Just,
you were eventually taken in, and I think taken on to the astronaut program, that was the class of what, 2000? And you were
Mhm.
called the Bugs. Why were you called the Bugs?
Well, there are little traditions within the astronaut office, and one of those is that the class before you names you. And they always try to be a little disparaging, kind of silly about the way they name this class. And the year 2000, as we were getting picked to come in, it was like the year 2000 was that time where, as 1999 rolled to 2000, this whole idea of the millennium bug,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Ah,
oh,
yeah.
those zeros, life was going to end as we know it, right? As the zeros just crashed the computers and, nothing was going to be the same. Thankfully that didn't happen. But
Yeah.
that's where our name came from. And we loved it. We loved it because most bugs have wings, right? And what does every astronaut want to do? Every astronaut wants to fly.
Yeah.
And so we were very thankful for that name.
Yeah, it's a good name. Actually, was anyone at NASA truly worried about the Millennium Bug at the time?
I think there was some concern, because people just really didn't know. I don't know if they were, hugely anxious about it, but there was enough out there that was questionable, that and so much of what we do in space relies on, communication systems, on the ones and zeros working properly. And so yeah, even if they wouldn't admit it, I'm pretty sure there probably was
Yeah.
some
Seems a
some
long
concern.
time ago now, doesn't it? We've
It
got some
does.
lovely stills coming up that thankfully you sent us, and I'm not
Oh,
sure if I'm going to be able to show them in the right order, so do forgive me. But that
that's
is, I think, a picture of your crew going off on your first mission. Is that STS-128?
So this actually is STS-133. So that
I
would
knew
have been
I'd
my
get it in the
second
wrong order.
flight. Yeah, I know. And you know what? It's all a blur to me now. It was such a surreal thing to do all this flying and space stuff that sometimes even now, somebody will ask me about a particular thing on a mission, I'll have to think, okay, who was I doing those things with? Because that's the way, more about the people that I was with, that I remember which flight it was
Yeah.
versus the activity itself. But yeah, this was the second flight that I went on. It was a Space Shuttle Discovery. We were heading out to the launch pad, and yeah, just incredible. And that was the final flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery.
Yeah. Both of
Yeah.
your flights were Discovery, weren't they?
Yeah, both times. Both times I flew to space on Discovery.
Yeah.
On the second one, I came home on a Discovery as well. But on my first flight, the STS-128 crew, I traveled with them to space, and then that's these guys here,
Yeah.
awesome group of people, and they spent about 2 weeks with me on the space station before they left, and then left me on board for for my 3 month time on the space station, and then the crew of Atlantis came and picked me up
Ah.
a
Oh,
little
so
over
you've
three
flown
months later.
Atlantis as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's one of the posters of the crew. Oh, that's
yeah,
STS 128.
yeah.
And then I think the next one is of one of your launches. Oh no, that's a painting of a launch. Now I love this one.
Oh.
Which launch is that, or doesn't it matter?
Well, the inspiration photo that I used for this one is the STS-128 launch because it was at night. It was just, I mean, it just lit up the sky. Of course, I was inside, so I didn't see it quite that same way, except for the light that was glowing outside the windows as we took off into space. But yeah, this painting is based on an image that one of the Kennedy Space Center photographers took of the launch.
Yeah, well, and that's what it is when you watch a night launch. It's all it's midnight black and all of that wonderful cloud below that's
Yeah.
launching into the air. Were both of your launches night launches?
No, the first one it was like a minute or two before midnight. And then my second launch was a beautiful blue sky day. Just couldn't have got any more gorgeous than
Th-
than that. The second
Does it
one,
make
yeah.
any difference to you when you're on board?
Not really, because except for that kind of glowing that you get at night that kind of just envelops the whole space shuttle. But you so quickly go from, still on that launch pad to, from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in 8.5 minutes, that the sky just goes from glowing to black. It's just incredible how quickly that happens and that you find yourself in space. So no, I don't think it really matters night or day.
And that first
Yeah.
launch, was it really scary? Or by then, are you so highly trained, you're not scared?
Well, I think I don't know if scared is the word about like the launch itself. I think you're totally respectful. You're totally aware of what the whole process is, the whole like this 7 million pounds of exploding, rocket stuff underneath you that it takes to get you off the planet and into space that way. But what you said, this whole idea of training, the way we train to do these missions, we know as much as we humanly can about the spacecraft itself, and yes, we are respectful of what that's all about. But we also, I think, train in a way that if it is humanly possible to deal with it, we'll be able to deal with it. And I think that's the best you can go into a situation like that. But I'll tell you, the fear for me was more, and maybe it was worry versus fear, was on my first flight, my son was 7 years old when I flew the first time. And for any of your family and friends, it's so much more difficult to watch somebody strapping in to launch on a rocket than it is to be the person strapping in to do it.
Yeah.
And so I just worried about the feelings that my son and my husband and my mom and my sisters would be having as they watched me do this.
It must make coming back all the more brilliant, though.
It does. It does. You cannot, I mean, as much as I felt like, even after my first flight, which was a little over 3 months long, and you feel like, man, I could stay another 3 months. This is such an extraordinary place. This is such a special place. You're doing work that ultimately is all about improving life on Earth. And I just found myself thinking, man, where else can I do this kind of thing and be in such an extraordinary place? And at the same time, you are so excited. I was so excited to see my son and my husband for the first time,
And
after landing.
and did you get a chance to talk to them very much from the ISS?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, the communication is really, really great. I spoke to them every day.
Oh,
at least once. And I tried to do that with, some kind of regularity, some kind of cadence that was like, when he was getting home from school and, what you would do, the conversations you would have if you were at home on Earth as well. And then once a week, we had a video conference with our families, which was very nice. And yeah, the communication that we have available to us, and it just keeps getting better as we go on. The communication is outstanding, and
it is, isn't
it
it? Yeah.
makes me think how wonderful it is because I have friends who are in the military that once a week they might get a call with their family, or if they're not underwater on the submarine, it could be months before they have the chance to speak to their families. So very
But there
nice.
you are up on the ISS, and reception is very good.
Yeah,
What
those satellites work.
you did a spacewalk in that first mission, didn't you?
I did, yes. That one's one of those things that kind of stands out as the surrealist of the surreal, because all of spaceflight is a surreal experience. And like this picture you're showing right now, I mean, I look at that picture and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do to do a spacewalk. And you're in your own little personal spaceship and you're crawling around, the outside of this ginormous space station, and you're just getting to look at it from another whole new
Mm.
perspective. And really, really incredible. And that picture you just showed, it's the one where my mom always, whenever she sees that picture, she's like, yeah, that's the picture. When I look at that picture, that's why I was afraid when you were in space. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, you're not holding on with both. NASA should have a two hands on the space station rule at all times, I'm like, well,
But you are
can't do
ultimately
anymore.
vulnerable. It's only a small umbilical cord,
Yeah.
holding you to life itself, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So it is frightening in a way, but a wonderful picture. Absolutely
Yeah.
incredible to think that was you. Do you ever
I
have to
know.
pinch yourself and think that was me?
I do. I pinch myself all the time when I look at those pictures and am just so grateful. I mean, really just so grateful to have had those experiences.
Didn't you
Yeah.
also, on one of the missions anyway, do the first live tweet from the ISS?
We did. Actually, Mike Massimino is the first astronaut to do a live tweet from space, but we did what was called a tweet up. NASA was doing these social experiences with people on the ground, and we were the first. Jeff Williams and I were the first ones to engage in a live tweet up from space. So communicating live with this audience and integrating Twitter into that whole conversation. So that was really fun. When we did that, we didn't have live internet at the time. We still had
Oh,
to send our tweets down to the ground and then they would post them for us. And now one of the coolest ways that astronauts are able to share the experience with people on the ground is that they can use social media. They can share a picture of something they just experienced, in an immediate way, and really it's been a very successful way to engage more and more people with the experience.
so on the ISS now, they have live internet, same as we all
They
do.
do. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Gosh.
Probably what I understand, it's not as high speed as what we enjoy down here, but it has gotten much better, much better. I don't think it's quite dial up, but it's probably not what we experience on a daily basis. But I'll tell you, I can email somebody on the space station, and if they are working at their computer, if it works out to be that time of day where they would be going through their emails and stuff, I mean, there's times where within 10 minutes I have a response from,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's just
amazing.
incredible to me.
Yeah, that is incredible, but it's quite cool to know that actually.
Yeah.
So they should. I imagine it goes through an awful lot of antiviral software on its way there.
Yeah, and that's a great point. That's the reason why we didn't have the live internet to begin with, is not that we couldn't have had it, but I think they're just, they really do want to make sure that all those security protocols in place, you don't want any kind of overlap between what would be your social media or your internet platform to interface with things that are controlling the space station either.
Absolutely. I think we've got quite a few more pictures of you spacewalking, which must be the most incredible feeling.
Yeah.
And again, it gives you a chance. I know you have jobs to do when you're out on a spacewalk. You're not just out there for an adventure, but it does give you a chance at least to look at the Earth again as an artist from a completely
Yeah.
different perspective.
Yeah, and to look at the spaceship as an artist too, with that backdrop of Earth. I just, I don't know if there was a picture of this or not, but one of the points during the spacewalk that's the most memorable for me is I actually was strapped, my feet were into a foot restraint on the end of that big robotic arm, the big white crane looking thing that's on the station where we move equipment and people around
Yeah.
from one place to another. And I was starting at that place where you see me, my mom's fear picture, where
Yeah.
I pulled this big box off of the space station that down here on Earth would probably weigh about 900 pounds. And up there, I could just move it around, hold it without any concern at all. And I'm strapped to the end of this robotic arm, hanging onto this box, and I got to move on the end of that arm from the end of the space station on this big arcing motion that took about 20 minutes down into the payload bay of the Space Shuttle Discovery, and then drop that box off. But in between, I was like, it was the most peaceful, comfortable place to be. I never felt like I was moving. It was like I was just standing still, holding onto this box. And the space station moved out of my view, and then Earth kind of rotated around in my view, and then out of nowhere came the space shuttle. And it was stunning. I was comfortable, temperature. I mean, I was so relaxed, and then just it was like that 20 minutes went by in a flash, and yet it felt like it was taking forever too. It was just the coolest thing to be.
And when you do jobs like that, and experience, there's a painting of you actually doing exactly that, waving,
Yeah.
I think. When you're doing that sort of spacewalk, or when you're doing any of your jobs, do you do them in silence, or does anyone play music? Or, you can almost hear the soundtrack to 2001 Space Odyssey
Yeah.
behind you, or what?
That would probably be the one that we would choose too. During a spacewalk, no. I mean, we're talking to each other and stuff, keeping in communication that way. But there's no, at least to my knowledge, no one, there's never been music playing kind of as the background to the spacewalk. On one of the spacewalks that my crewmates did for STS-133, we had a point where we were doing this experiment outside called Message in a Bottle. And so we played really quickly. We played that, that Sting or that police song, Message in a Bottle, but it was just a really quick blurb. It wasn't like the backdrop. But inside the space station, there's music playing all the time, all the time.
It keeps you linked to home, doesn't it? And of course, other paintings you have done. Oh, there's a lovely photograph there of you, and it looks like another person, but it's not.
It does. That was after my spacewalk, so I was thanking my spacesuit for performing so beautifully and taking care of me. And it feels like it's another person with you almost. And I work a lot now with the company ILC Dover, which I will call the spacesuit company. And I thank them all the time too for building such a wonderful high performing suit that allows us to do those kinds of things.
Well, it does allow you to be in outer space, doesn't it? You wouldn't be able to do it without it, that's for sure. And meanwhile, you're still painting, and there's lots of other paintings you have done. That, of course, is the ISS itself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I suppose that's something you will have seen. Is that from a picture you would have taken?
Yeah, that's from a picture on our departure after the STS-133 mission, where we had spent 2 weeks at the station. And one of the things that's really, really neat when we depart on our spaceship from the International Space Station is we do what we call a fly around. So we undock from the space station, and then we actually do a full 360-degree fly around of the full space station, and we photo document. So they can see places on the station that you normally wouldn't be able to see just looking out the window, and you just get this stunning view of this. I mean, the space station is a masterpiece hanging, and it is like a work of art hanging there against the backdrop of Earth and this blackest black you've ever seen. And it's really nice to be able to to appreciate it in that way as you're leaving it, not knowing if you'll ever go back there too. I mean, that was a feeling I was having, not knowing if I would, get back to that place, wanting to really suck it in, and really feel it.
And when you left, you really didn't want to go. You would have loved to have stayed longer.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that that being my second mission, it was a short duration flight. It was 2 weeks, and there's actually video of our whole departure, the whole crew's departure from the station. And there's a point where it's just my commander and me left on the station side of the hatch. And of course, the commander is always the last one to leave. Make sure your crew is safely on board. And man, I tell you, they like had to pull my clawing hands off the hatch. Back, and you see him do this like sweeping, all right, Nicole, come on, let's go, kind of thing. Because I know it is such an extraordinary place, and you want to be there. You wish your family and friends could be there and experience, even if it's just for a little bit of time, to know that same feeling. Yeah.
That was the other thing I was going to ask you. When any of us get the chance to go and see wonderful places and experience amazing experiences, it's one thing to do it on your own and for yourself, but most of the time we want to share it with somebody we love. And that's something you can't do. Yes, you get close to your crewmates, but it's not the same as maybe taking your husband or your son up there with you. And that's something you can probably never do as an astronaut.
Yeah, not yet. I mean, I look forward to the time where that's going to be a possibility. Even perhaps when we're looking at these plans for going back to the moon, having permanent settlements there. And I think at that point, there's going to be opportunity for families to actually spend time in those places together. Certainly as we go further off our planet and establish, settlements, on Mars, or maybe have that Star Trek future that I'm, hopeful for one day. That's just going to have to be part of the whole solution to it, is that, people are going to have their families with them for those kinds of exploration.
Yeah. We've got a couple more pictures of your paintings, I think. Aquarius Garden coming up.
Ah, yeah. And it's so that full painting is a little longer, and it's the bottom side of the Aquarius undersea habitat, which is this place off the coast of Key Largo. It's a laboratory undersea, and it's about the size of a school bus. And in preparation for going on long duration missions, NASA sends us to this place to do what we call an analog mission. Something that in some ways is similar to what we'll experience in space. And yeah, I had the chance to spend 18 days underwater on the Aquarius undersea habitat, and it's been down there for years. So the whole underside of the hab has this beautiful coral reef structure attached to it. Yeah. And the life that's there is just incredible. And it was absolutely the best preparation for going to live and work on a space station too. Yeah.
And I think we've also got your flight home painting, which I know is very special to you, because this was based on a photograph taken by somebody who was on the ISS watching you leave.
Yes. Yeah, this one, actually the image of this I use in pretty much every presentation that I give, because so many times I get to ask the question, what was it like to be in space? What, that question that's really difficult to answer. But this painting, based on that image, it's like this reminder that we travel around the Earth 16 times a day when we're in space. And part of that whole experience is one of these sunrises or sunsets. And that everything about this experience has to do with the people we're sharing it with, right? I mean, I know I'm inside that little silhouetted Space Shuttle Atlantis with, my 6 crewmates, and we're on our way home after a successful mission. And I know that we're traveling at 5 miles a second. And I know that Jeff Williams is still on the space station and took this just really wonderful memory photograph for us to have.
Painting. It's a lovely painting. It's very poignant, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Back to your training, like you were saying, you do a lot of underwater training. I think we've got an image of you doing, well, there you are, doing spacewalk training in neutral buoyancy, of course.
Yeah, that is, so we have the underwater training that we do where it's kind of a mission, that the Aquarius undersea mission, where you're there and you're doing all the stuff that's kind of similar to what you would do in space. And then this pool that we do our spacewalk training in primarily is, I think it's one of the biggest pools on the planet. It's 200 feet long by 100 feet wide, 40 feet deep, the most crystal clear water that I have ever experienced in my entire life, to the point of where you have your hand in front of your face and you're like, is there even water? It just doesn't look like it. And there's a mock-up of the space station inside of that pool. And we do most of our spacewalk training in there, in the suits, the real suits. It's the most physically challenging thing I've ever done, I think, in my life.
Yeah, I gather it is utterly exhausting. And when you look at the picture, you see how big the suit is compared to you. You're this tiny little being inside the suit.
And it's funny. I think there's a little bit of the optics stuff in this too, because the helmet the visor has this curvature to it, and then the distortion that you get in the water. It reminds me of that, the scenes with, in that movie Beetlejuice, where it's the little shrunken heads and things. But yeah, the suit is big and it weighs 300 pounds. And, to get in the water, they lift you on a big crane in the suit into the water. And then they try to get you as neutrally buoyant as possible in the suit. But, and it's pressurized. So you're working against the pressure in the suit the whole time. And you're in there for a little over 6 hours doing this training for what you're going to do in space. And it really reminds, as astronauts, we steal a lot of the Navy SEAL mottos, one of which is the only easy day is yesterday. And the other is the pleasure is the pain, right? And so you're going through this training, you're getting prepared to do something that will be absolutely a highlight of your spaceflight experience, let alone perhaps a highlight of your life.
Yeah.
And it is painful. It is painful to work in that suit in a pool for 6 hours, fighting the drag of the water, fighting gravity, fighting the pressure in the suit. And then thankfully, when you get to space, the weight of the suit doesn't matter. You can move almost effortlessly in it. And then, there are different challenges like getting moving and then getting yourself stopped once you get moving it's
Oh, absolutely. It sounds very, very complicated. We've got a few more pictures which maybe you can talk us through.
Okay.
First of all, we've got the mission patch from STS-133. It must be wonderful having those patches with your name on it.
Yeah, and this patch in particular to me is so special because for a number of reasons. I think it's one of the most artistically done and colorful, just simple even patches that has ever been made. And when we were first assigned to this flight, we were assigned as the final flight of the space shuttle program. And then there was another flight that was assigned afterwards that we were able to add another flight to the manifest. So we didn't end up being the final flight of the program, but we were the final flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. And we wanted the patch to be very specially done. And so we asked an artist, Robert McCall, who, he did artwork for 2001 Space Odyssey movie. He did artwork for Star Trek. He did beautiful, fantastical artwork about what it might be like to live in space in the future. And he had actually designed the patch for the first space shuttle mission too. And so since we were assigned as the final one, we wanted him to do that for us. And he was so excited to have the opportunity to do that and to create through his art, the way the plume of the exhaust is, the kind of
it becomes
really rough shuttle. That's not a perfectly drawn space shuttle, but it just looks so good, and it's very typical of his style. And it, as it turned out, sadly, was the last piece of art that he did before passing away. And oh my gosh, just so special for so many reasons to us. And I've got it on my jacket here today. It is, I think, the most beautiful patch ever.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. We've got another one of you, I think, on the flight deck of Discovery. Now, what are you doing there? Why are you in those outfits?
Yeah, so this would be a couple days before launch. And as a crew, we get to go out and kind of check out all the whole setup inside the space shuttle, make sure we know where all our stuff is going to be. And we wear these blue, what we call bunny suits. And they'll do those in all kinds of facilities where they want to keep the contamination down, not just in space flight, but we wear these blue bunny suits, get inside and check it all out. And this young lady was the and responsible for all of the activities that we were doing that night as we checked out the space shuttle. And it's kind of cool, when you know that in the next day or two, the next time you come back, you're going to be strapping in, you're going to be flying to space, hopefully, and just to have like a little field trip out there first,
Yeah.
check it all out, really special.
And I know you feel very strongly about the ground team that supports you just for something like that launch and throughout the whole mission. You get to know them very well, and of course you rely on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think about my ground support team as not just the people that, kind of the technical side of it, the people that are at Kennedy Space Center, at Johnson Space Center, working on making sure the mission is safe and that we successfully can perform it. But also you can see in that left picture, those are some of my friends. And for my flight, we actually had some t-shirts made up, Nicole's ground support team. And this was the rollout of the Space Shuttle Discovery, or heading out to the launch pad in preparation for launch. And NASA very kindly allowed the employees to come out and watch that, and they could bring their families. And I love this picture. Those are some of my dearest friends in that picture. And the fact that as NASA employees, they were able to experience it from that standpoint, but also because they were my friends out there just, I felt them lifting me up as they were out there doing that. Yeah.
Wind beneath your wings, if you like.
Absolutely.
I know you alluded earlier to the fact that Viking has been very thrilled to have so many of you astronaut guys aboard when Annalie Fisher was godmother to the Viking Orion. And you were on board too, weren't you? As was I, which was wonderful. And in your speech, when we were all aboard the Viking Orion and you astronauts were on stage, and I think the person who was moderating the whole thing said that there were 14, I think, astronauts. Out of how many of you have ever been in space? Very few. We've got 14, I think, at least on the stage at that moment, which was incredible. Yeah. And you all knew each other so well. But when the microphone came to you, I think you said how grateful you are to this day to have gotten the chance to do what you did and view life from a very different and unique perspective. Let's have a little clip because we've actually got you saying this. This is from the inauguration cruise of the Viking Orion.
Nicole, what about you? What do you think about when you think about your time in space?
Well, I think it's, even when I think about my time down here, let's say on Spaceship Earth, I think about it with gratitude. We were just saying, is it special? Is it what? I mean, I feel like I was blessed to have that experience. And certainly, as Paolo said, there's the floating, there's the looking out the window. But in the end, I try to figure out how to sum it up simply. And for me, it really came down to three things when I reflect on my time in space, which I'm also trying to use in a way that takes advantage of the experience and allows me to share it with other people, but to have positive action come from it as well. And the three things that I think about every day now are, and they'll sound really simple, like kindergarten level stuff, is we live on a planet. We're all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line that blankets us all.
That was lovely, and every one of the astronauts on the stage agreed with you how lucky you all were. Not that you haven't earned your right to be there, but how lucky you were to have the chance to just look at Earth from a different perspective. By the way, let me just tell everybody watching that the full video of that whole presentation of all those astronauts on the stage on board the Viking Orion, that's going to be shown in full on Viking.TV at this time on Sunday, so watch out for that. But how did you enjoy the Viking cruise?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. I loved it. I think, it was special to be there with Anna too, who was, as you mentioned, the godmother of this ship, and to be one of her 300 closest friends that got to experience this, and to have my family there with me too. I think that was welcomed as part of the cruise was one of the most special things about it. The itinerary was fantastic. The ship is gorgeous. And I'll tell you, we spoke about this at one point where, I had never been a cruise person before that. right? And I think I told you I have this fear of the rogue wave. So that kind of, makes me question doing. I will never question it again after having that experience. And it's likely, that if we do go on another one, or when we do, it will be with Viking too, because that was just everything about it
Yeah.
just made it. Everything about it.
And you've been
Yeah.
into space. I mean, that's what I couldn't get over being on that same cruise, was how many of you astronauts who'd been in space were really, really impressed by being on a Viking cruise ship. You were all so thrilled to be there.
And I think it speaks to the fact that, I mean, we just need to be looking for the awe and wonder around us all the time, right? No matter where we are, to be grateful for that. And that cruise absolutely opened up awe and wonder, to all of us. And that includes the time, that we had to spend together too, getting to know each other again, just being reacquainted, meeting new people. Knowing Anna like we do as friends, and then to meet her other friends that we never would have encountered otherwise in our kind of day-to-day NASA lives, but to just get to know somebody through the other people in their life, and then to be experiencing these places on Earth that we might have seen them from space, but we had never seen from from down here on Earth before. That's kind of an interesting contrast to.
That's weird. Where was your favorite place on that short cruise?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I really, the Portofino stop was really, really gorgeous. I'd never been to Pisa before, so that was something, and especially with my son, just to, the whole architecture and what's kind of iconic about there was neat to experience finally. And then Barcelona. I had, I guess, no real expectation of what that was going to be like. I mean, I knew about the art that's there and the architecture and the thing. That was just stunning to me, just to be able to be immersed in that and to feel it, to see it, and yeah, be in awe of the kinds of things that as human beings we can make possible. You go to that cathedral and you're like, how in the world? It's just like looking at a space station.
Yes.
How in the world do we do these things? And yet we do.
I know, isn't it astonishing as well? Are you as an astronaut are saying that there are still places on, I mean, you've been in space, but there are still places on Earth that can knock you back, but especially as an artist, you must have loved it. Tell me about your relationship with Alan Bean. Alan Bean, of course, the veteran Apollo astronaut, who was, I think, the 4th person to walk on the moon. Mm-hmm. You knew him well.
I did. And I can, the name that was just mentioned, Anna Fisher, I can thank. I had met Alan Bean. I, knew him. The astronaut community is relatively small, so through reunions and stuff, we get to know each other a little bit. At least introductorily, on with some people. But Anna, again, the word gratitude just comes up. I am so thankful to her because she came to me one day as I was getting ready to retire from NASA, and she's like, Nicole, you're going to go off and do this art thing. You're excited about it. She's like, you need to meet Alan Bean in person in a way that's special for you. You need to spend some time with him. And so she made that introduction and took me to meet him at his house in his studio, was just surrounded by the art that he does, the way that he creates, and had this time to spend, you just kind of personally one-on-one talking about this transition from astronaut to artist and what that means and how I could use it and how people will respond to it, or at least from his standpoint and what he experienced. And it was absolutely one of the most meaningful mentoring kinds of things that I've ever experienced in my life. Very thankful for that.
Was he an artist before he went to the moon, or was it going to the moon that inspired some sort of wanting to be creative when he got back?
So he was an artist. He would take class. I mean, he actually went and got trained too. Unlike me, everything's completely experimental. And you will see that if you compare what I do to what Alan Bean did. And yeah, so he wanted to train himself as an artist. He wanted to know, like Monet was inspiration for him. And so he was learning to paint and painting before he went to the moon. But I don't think he had found his subject yet, his real subject. And I think the moon and the experiences that he and his friends had on the moon became absolutely what he really wanted to share with everyone.
And is it true that in some of his paintings, he actually incorporated real moon dust?
Yeah, really special. And I think in every painting, he incorporates, so he had the patches from his spacesuit that he walked on the moon with. And it was really cool the way he did this. He would, excuse me, he kept those patches in like a lockbox, a glass lockbox on the wall. And then as he was doing a painting, he would pull out little threads of the patch, which all had moon dust on them because they were protected. It was from what was on the moon. And he would incorporate these pieces of the string, just the string of the patches, into the paintings. There were other little materials, like little kind of metallic foil materials that had been on the lunar hardware that he was able to get pieces of and incorporate it into the paintings. And then also, the Apollo guys got to keep some of the equipment that they used on the moon. And he had the hammer that he used. And so in his paintings, you will see kind of this texture to them because he's got hammer marks in them. He's got, from some training boots that he's got boot print marks in the paintings. And it just gives this elevation to the paintings that you just don't see in other ways. And then that Monet influence, that Monet inspiration, that's where he said, that's my artistic license. I can do whatever I want with the colors, even if they didn't exist on the moon. And, there would be these turquoises and lilacs and blues and pinks and things that you just would never see on the moon, but that he incorporated to bring them, those memories back to even more.
Yeah, because I seem to remember him saying once, I watched a talk that he did where he said, when I went to the moon, it was just grey. But, I could, as an artist, imagine the colours that it should have had.
Yeah.
And that's what bringing the moon to life, I suppose. Now, tell me about Space for Art, because I know it's a foundation that you set up, and I think it might even involve the spacesuit behind you too. So what's it all about?
So, and I'll try to make it short. When I retired from NASA, and again, just that experience with Alan, learning how that transition worked for him, how special that was, and that you can use things like art and music to share this spaceflight experience, right? To introduce more people to what we're doing in space, how that's all about improving life on Earth. And I wanted to share that experience with people. And so I was going to do that with my own art. And then I got introduced to an artist who had started the art and medicine program at the Pediatric Cancer Center in Houston at MD Anderson. And he always did, his name is Ian Sion. He had always done, individual artwork with kids, and then he would bring them together into some large format art piece, big dragons and murals and wrapping school buses and things. And just stunning. And the kids could see their piece as part of something bigger, right? And he wanted to do something with space. And long story short, we came up with the spacesuit idea. And very thankfully, the company that made that spacesuit that I did my spacewalk in, ILC Dover, the spacesuit company, has volunteered with us since the very beginning to help quilt each of the kids' individual pieces of art into these art spacesuits. Oh. And oh my gosh, you showed a picture of two of them, with Susie, one of our friends, Susie, walking with the suits, where so the one, when you look at this picture, the one on the left is named Unity, the one on the right is Hope. Hope was the first suit that we created, which was, each little patch on that suit is an original painting from a child in cancer treatment at MD Anderson. Oh. And then Unity is, each of the little triangle paintings is artwork again from kids in hospitals, but all over the world, in all of the places that we work with on the International Space Station program. And that suit actually got to fly to space. And the kids got to see the suit in space, floating around. We did a video conference with the kids in all the different, country control centers and piped it into the hospitals. Mm. And so what was going to be my artwork telling sharing the experience I had in space has evolved into what I honestly believe is my next mission in life, is that I got to go to space so I could work with these kids creating these really beautiful art projects that
means something.
They do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get goosebumps every time I think about it because, I went into it thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to go paint with kids in a hospital one day. Ian's going to have me do this. I'll kind of follow along as we do these suits. And from day one, I knew I had to be in for whatever the duration of this was going to be. And our motto or, kind of mission at the Space for Art Foundation now is that we are uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art.
Yeah.
And
yes.
It is incredible to see. I mean, these kids are, all of them around the world, they're in hospitals, they're in refugee centers, they're in very rural schools in places where all of them in one way or another are going through something that you hope is absolutely the worst thing they ever have to deal with in their lives. And yet you come into them, they come into these art sessions and you use space exploration as the inspiration for, the theme of what we're going to do. And it's incredible. They sit up straighter, they feel stronger, they're talking to you about their future outside of this place. It's a very transcendent thing, I think, for them. And
that's brilliant.
I mean,
it really does. It's inspirational.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. And we now, I mean, I could ramble on about this all day, and we've had suits created in countries all over the world. The one behind me is named Exploration, and that has artwork from kids in over 50 countries. And the suit we're working on now is called Beyond. And ILC Dover has just started the assembly of all the artwork.
Wow.
And we have artwork from at least one child in every country on the planet. And we are so excited that once that suit is created, we are going to be bringing it with us to Glasgow in November for the UN Climate Change Conference.
Excellent.
And it's so cool. And the suit is going to be this ambassador for Spaceship Earth, right? And remind us, right in line with the theme of what we should be looking at with solving this climate change problem, about how interconnected our personal health is to our planetary health. And just bring that to life with these kids.
I think we're all beginning to learn very slowly. Tell me about the Olay advert, because a lot of people might think, well, that's totally different. But actually, there was a message behind that as well. And again, a lot of people might think, why is a serious astronaut doing an advert for a beauty product? But there was a serious message to it, wasn't there?
Absolutely. And that's really the only reason I would do it. Excuse me, I'm going to have to cough. I had to mute myself.
And this is still from the Olay advert. Sadly, we can't show the whole advert, but I think people would find it really cool. But yeah, there was a reason that you made this advert.
Yeah, let's see if I can talk. Yeah, this was, an invitation I received. It was the Super Bowl commercial, and who knew? I mean, I got a lot more response. It was interesting to me about, oh my gosh, Nicole, you're getting to do a Super Bowl commercial, than I think I probably did for going to space. But
well, a lot of people watching.
Yeah, but it was important to me because underlying it was this whole message for young girls to get involved with, science and technology and engineering and arts and math, and encourage them through this space-themed advertisement. And the Olay partnered with an organization called Girls Who Code, who do just really incredible work with young girls around the world, I think, where they learn how to code and how to become interested in, this technology that really is what allows us to do everything we do now, right? Coding is behind almost everything we do. And, to be able to encourage them through something that would get seen, that would inspire, hopefully people to, think differently about things. And on top of that, Olay was donating, money from this to that Girls Who Code activity, and just incredible to see the response to it as well.
It's important thing.
Back and to get the Viking on again.
Sorry, say again.
and to get to put a spacesuit on again. I know it seems kind of funny, but oh my gosh, just to be with the two women that I was with, Busy Phillips and Lily Singh, and to be in these, Hollywood suits.
Yeah, Hollywood.
That just, they fit beautifully. It was just this nice, nice reminder of being back in a place like that, and hopefully
nice for you to get a chance to wear a spacesuit, but also look glamorous.
There was some glamour. Yeah, that was not a normal part of spaceflight. It was definitely not all about the glamour.
I get that. But
this was
the Viking Orion. When you were on board, I was in the audience, and there was a question that I asked everybody on board, which I will ask you again in a minute. I couldn't resist it, but when they said, "Does anyone want to ask a question?" I put up my hand. Let's just have a look at this moment.
Okay.
Hi. If some world-class president stood up today, like JFK, and said, within 10 years, we will land on Mars, and because that's such a short time frame, we need really experienced astronauts, how many of you would volunteer and why?
Thank you for the question. That was a good one.
So what's your answer?
Yes, I would absolutely go to space. I mean, you can ask me when I'm 90 years old, do I want to travel to space again? The answer is absolutely yes. I don't know how you can not want to go back and do that again. For something like Mars, I would need my family with me.
Yeah.
Definitely need my family with me, and I'd want to know that we could get back to Earth. This is my
How
favorite
old is
planet.
your son now?
My son is 19 years old now.
Right. Would he want to go with you?
I think so. I think he would. I do. If you ask him, does he want to be an astronaut? He won't answer yes to that question. But to have the experience, as a family to do that, and maybe by that time he'd have his own, and we could take them with us too. That would be extraordinary. And we did get a chance recently to do one of those zero G flights together, and he was a total natural. Yeah.
That's what they call the vomit comet.
That is what they call the vomit comet. Yes.
I'd love to do that, really.
Yeah, you would love it. You would love it.
I would love it, I think.
Yeah.
You've written a book called Back to Earth, What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet. Is there a way you can sum up what life in space did teach you about our home planet?
I think so. And I think what it taught me was a little bit about us, right? And our relationship to our planet. There's 3 lessons I learned in space, which are: we live on a planet, we're all Earthlings, only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere, protecting us all. And I think underlying that, the message in this book is how we need to figure out, just like we have on this mechanical life support system that we built to operate and keep us alive in space, we need to figure out how to live like crew, not passengers here on Spaceship Earth.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so for example, we go to space as a crew, and I'll use the International Space Station as example because that's what I use in this book. I believe it's the most wonderful example for how we can bring these lessons back to Earth. That we go and we live on this mechanical life support system, right? That we build to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally, because we have to in order to live there. And then we get there as this crew of 6 or 7 Earthlings that are representing 15 different countries and working as one crew together on this higher mission, and peacefully and successfully doing that. And underlying all that is that in order for us to do any work there, we know that every day on our spaceship, we have to be acutely aware of how much CO2 is in our atmosphere, of how much clean drinking water we have, of the integrity of our thin metal hull, and the health and well-being of all of our crewmates. And that's just for us to survive. We have to be aware and actively involved in those things, and taking the actions necessary to maintain the environment in a way that allows us to survive and to thrive. And that's exactly what we need to be doing as crewmates down here on Spaceship Earth.
It's what we all hope for, isn't it? It's funny, you've alluded to Star Trek several times during this conversation. And I guess all you astronauts are a bit geeky from that point of view. You all love Star Trek, Star Wars.
We are.
But, you know, that's the vision that was always in the Star Trek programs, was that one day we would all learn to live together and learn as a planet to be together. What do you think? There you are. That's an example of it. That crew poster there with everybody wearing sort of Trekkie uniforms. What do you think of the commercial space projects that are going on at the moment? I mean, even to the point that Captain Kirk, William Shatner, is apparently going to go into space next week.
I'm really excited about it. I think that it's like everything where it will get better if there's access to it for more and more people. Right. And that's true for everything we do down here on Earth. Right. We're trying to encourage, young women and people of color and people from other places to get involved with, with science and technology. Right. Well, that's because it all becomes better when we bring more people into the mix. And I think the same thing is true about spaceflight, about not just the opportunity for more and more people to experience Earth from space, though I think that will be a pivotal thing for anybody who has that chance, but for us to continue to do the work in space that ultimately is all about improving life on Earth. And we have to take these baby steps that are happening right now where, just the people who can afford it are going to get to do it, and then it'll continue to open up to more and more. And we'll be able to lift, industry that's really harming our planet off Earth into the benign environment of space. People would be motivated to do that and help that happen and generate electricity for the whole planet by lifting that off the Earth. Again, as a solution to some of the most challenging problems we have on Earth. And we have to encourage this because I don't know, there are so many solutions coming to us already from the way we live and work in space together that we just have to keep extending on that. And that's require us to have more and more people have access to that environment as well.
Your book, I know, is due out, I think, in the States next week, isn't it? I'm not sure when it's due out in Britain, but I can't wait to read it. Meanwhile, I've got a ton of questions for you from people watching at the moment. Shall we whiz through them before we run out of time? If I can take us off the air. This is a lovely one. This is Betty in Cleveland. Hi, Betty. She says, I don't actually have a question. Being born in Florida, I've been a fan of the space program since its beginning. I was thrilled to find Astronaut Stott's information since my maiden name is also Stott. My parents came to this country in the 1920s from Scotland, so I wanted to listen to her today. I was thrilled to be able to attend Apollo 10 at the Cape in 1969 as a guest, being state president of the Florida Federation of Business and Professional Women's Club. I am equally thrilled to hear her speak today. Thank you. Isn't that fantastic?
That is. And think about what, Betty, thank you. Think about what she just said. And that, first of all, there was this, during the time of Apollo 10, this professional women's organization, participating in that. How cool is that? Those kinds of things have just continued to grow. And I think what we did during that Apollo time, both from the standpoint of the women working in that program, which there were a lot more of them than were visibly seen in the press and the media of the program, and to where we are now. With the space program and women involved. Back during Apollo 10, there were no women in mission control in Houston. There was one woman in Launch Control Center at Kennedy Space Center. And today, both of those operations are run by really incredible women. And when you look, across the demographic of the people in the control center making these missions happen, it's just this mix of humanity. It's so cool to see, how space has kind of led the way in this idea that diverse workforces are really the most successful ones.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we learned a lot from the movie Hidden Figures too, didn't we? Some of the untold stories. We're going to have to whiz through these
I'll
But
be short.
there are lots of budding artists who have got some interesting questions for you. For instance, Enola in Dallas says, now this I find fascinating, does it take longer for the art to dry in space?
You know, I painted with watercolors, which probably besides acrylics would be the only thing you really could use. And I think it probably took less time because we have kind of an air-conditioned room environment on the space station. It's kept drier than humid, so it's a really nice, dry, comfortable, cool environment. And I think they probably dried quicker on the space station than they would here in my Florida studio.
Yeah. Troy in Great Falls says, do you think acrylic paint would be as difficult to use since you are utilizing less water with it?
Well, I think in hindsight, the watercolor was the best way to go. First of all, you absolutely couldn't bring oil paints with you. There are two, that we can't have things that get into the air that we can't clean out of the air. So from like a toxic or, just air quality environment, standpoint, we couldn't use those. Watercolors, I think, turned out to be the best because you can really easily clean your brush from watercolors. So I could use one brush the whole time. I could just take another ball of water and just squish the color out. Whereas acrylics, I think you'd have to have multiple brushes. I think it would just be kind of a messy thing to do. But there was somebody who had acrylic paints on board the station before I flew. That was Richard Garriott. He was a spaceflight participant. He flew to station, was there for like 10 to 12 days, and he brought up acrylic paints. He built a little plastic box, stuck the paper, and he doesn't say he painted. He just says he used paints on the station. He stuck the paper all along the wall of this box, and then he just squirted all the colors inside the plastic box and closed it and let it do whatever it was going to do in that microgravity environment. Very Jackson Pollock, like, little dots of the paint all over the paper. Was really, really cool. But I think if he had used brushes, it would have been pretty messy to clean that up.
Interesting, though. It just shows that there's a whole new experimental zone that you should build a studio in space.
Yeah.
Joe in Streamwood in Illinois says, what is your favorite art medium? Do you prefer mixed medium?
I do prefer mixed medium, and I think that's because I really don't have any training. It's all really experimental for me. So even Anne, you showed that painting of the wave that looked like it has like sea glass and other paint on it and these sand and things mixed in, because I really enjoyed that. That's a metal print of that wave image, and then I just embellished it with sea glass and other materials. And I found that to be really, really interesting. And I still continue to do that. I mean, I'll do a painting that has watercolors and acrylics and hard materials incorporated in, because I just think it gives it a nice elevation and allows you to use the materials in ways they might not have even been intended to be used.
Well, and with the added medium of maybe space or zero gravity, who knows what you could come up with. Another one here, Jean in St. Louis says, is that another one of your paintings behind you? And we can see so many things behind you.
I know. So I have to figure out which way I'm turning here. So there's a couple paintings behind me. One of them, if you can see the one in the white frame, that's actually a print of the painting I did in space. But most of the rest are paintings by artists I just really love. And there's a bronze sculpture by an artist I love. And so I like to have that inspiration around me too. It's kind of cool to see the different kinds of things that other artists are doing with space as the inspiration.
Another down-to-earth one from Royal in Dallas. What are the meals like on the ISS?
Excuse me, the food actually is really pretty good. It's totally different, presentation style and, the way we eat down here on Earth, because everything is in a bag, kind of, either ready to eat or needs to be heated up, or you need to add water to it to reconstitute it into the food you're going to eat. Nice variety of food, because as an International Space Station, we have food from all the different countries. My favorite was the Japanese curries, which were just delicious. And but the texture and the presentation of them are very different, and you're not putting food on a plate because it'll all just float off. And so we just use long-handled spoons to dig our food out of bags. And Unfortunately, most of it tastes pretty good too.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Things have moved on a bit anyway. John in the Palm Coast says, I tuned in to listen to an astronaut being a pilot myself. My father, who worked on the program, was able to take me to see one of the capsules after it returned, and I was allowed to crawl in only a week after its return. What I was able to listen to today was to a person that is so much more than an astronaut. You are amazing. Keep doing so much for the world.
Oh, thank you. And it always makes me so happy to know that that it's that access thing again too, right? The inspiration that, John, that you probably felt from just knowing this place that you're in, which was really, it's just a place. It's a place where other people experience something really extraordinary, and to get to be in there and think about that, and maybe, help figure out what you're curious about at the time, whatever. I mean, that makes me smile.
Yeah, it's
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Mika, who's one of our very, very loyal viewers in Montclair, who I've met, by the way. Hi, Mika. She says, is the necklace Nicole is wearing significant? Because I noticed she was wearing it on the Orion a couple of years ago.
Ah, yes. So the necklace I'm wearing is actually a piece of art that I created. And it's this is my kind of prototype, because there's little bubbles in it, and but I love it. And it's an original painting based on an image from space that I took of the Bahamas. And that whole tropical water area is one of my very favorite places to see. And so it's based on the Bahamas, and and this is an oil painting. And then I just set it into the bezel and sealed it with jeweler's epoxy. And yeah, so it is special to me. Yes, thank you.
So you are very multimedia by the sound of it. I'll just do a couple more quickies, and then we won't keep you very much longer. Oh, good one here from Shannon in Chantilly. How far away do you think we are from beginning some sort of a civilization on Mars?
Mars, I think we're still a little ways off, 2030s at least, I think. Mars is a difficult place. Getting there, setting up and living there. We have still a lot to learn about the effects on the human body, and how we're going to manage that when we're out in that deep space. I mean, when you think about it, the farthest we've gone as humans has been the moon, which is about 250,000 miles from Earth, 250,000 miles. The closest that Mars ever is to us is about 37 million miles away. So that's a big shift. But we're working towards it. And I mean, I see us, hopefully in this decade, starting that presence again on the moon. And everything that we learn while we are living and working on the moon is absolutely going to prepare us better to go and set up home on Mars, which will be like another spaceship, because there's not much about Mars that's like Earth that's going to welcome us there. We're going to have to, bring it all ourselves.
And what do you say? Because you must be asked so many of these questions all the time, but there will always be people who will say, a space program is such a waste of money. We have so many problems here on Earth to sort first. Why spend so much money on a space program?
Well, first of all, and this is not the answer to the question, but all the money that's spent on a space program is spent right here on Earth. It's not spent in space. So that's something to consider in terms of the economics of what goes on just to develop, to create, to implement a space program. Absolutely. And I looked for this when I went to space station, because I was, a little questionable too. Absolutely everything in one way or another that we are doing in space is ultimately about improving life on Earth. And that includes going back to the moon, establishing a presence there. That includes going on to Mars and exploring in a way that gets us further off Earth than we've ever been before, and hopefully leads us to the time where we do have that Star Trek future we keep talking about. But the ability to understand our planet better, to take action based on that understanding, and then to even be able to do things like this conversation that we're having here today is all in one way or another based on what we had to put in place to explore space.
Yeah. And I think the sheer fact, don't you notice a mood change, probably since COVID, that we are beginning to celebrate and laud our scientists a little more?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. I think that's been really brought home to us. And with what we've all been experiencing, excuse me, in this last year and a half. And I think it's this reality check, right, of who and where we are. together, on a planet in space, and recognizing that we can be isolated here as well. And just knowing that we are being given the information that we need to, to overcome our most challenging problems. And
Yeah.
I like to think of it like, because of what we know, because of what science is showing us, because of the exploration we're doing, we really do have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space.
I know people will be getting in touch with me to say, where can we see your paintings? Do you have an online gallery or something that we can go to?
I have a website. It's, you can go to NicoleStott.com, and there is a section of art. Don't judge me by my website. I've never set it up quite as it's decent, but it's not, as good as it should be. If somebody's interested in anything that's on that site, they can reach out to me through the contact page there. And then I really encourage people to check out the Space for Art Foundation page at spaceforartfoundation.org for that one, and to see the incredible artwork that's coming to life through these kids around the world.
Well, we'll have all the right links for people at the end of this video. But we've come to the end of our time. In fact, we're well over our time. I hope you forgive me, Nicole. But it's been so brilliant talking to you. Congratulations on all you've done and all you're doing. And good luck with the book, which, as I said, I think comes out in the States next week. I'm not sure where it's coming out in Britain and the rest of the world.
November 11th in the UK.
Sorry?
November 11th in the UK.
Great. Perfect for Christmas, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. It's been absolutely brilliant meeting you again, although I didn't meet you properly the first time. I do hope we meet again. I really, really do.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Absolutely fantastic. You've been a wonderful guest. And let me just tell everybody on Viking TV right now that next week is Fashion Week. And I'm going to be meeting one of the world's most fashionable designers of eyewear. Yes, spectacles and glasses. He's Tom Davis, spectacle advisor and designer to some of the most fashionable people on the planet, certainly the world's A-list, the ultimate expert in telling you what sort of face you have and what sort of frames would enhance it. When you look at some of the most famous faces in the world, they have considerably enhanced their image with glasses. Everyone from Marvel superhero Ryan Reynolds, for instance, Richard Gere, and Friends star Jennifer Aniston, right through to celebrities and wonderful actors like Diane Keaton. And I always have to say, probably the most sexy and successful superstar ever to wear glasses and make them her own, Sophia Loren. I don't actually need glasses yet, probably one day, but I'm so thrilled to tell you that Tom is going to give me a personal assessment of what would suit my face. So if you indeed would like an instant consultation next Thursday, perhaps you're thinking of new glasses or maybe just a great pair of sunglasses, then send me pictures of your face with or without glasses, and I can ask Tom to give you his immediate advice. Just send your picture to the email address below, or if you see a button below this screen, just press it. You'll go on to what we're calling face fashion, and that's www.Viking.TV/submissions, Viking.TV/submissions, or simply press the link below and do upload your photo and your questions. I'll say that once more, just in case you haven't got it on screen. Viking TV submissions, or simply press the link below. As I said, I hope it's there. Do upload your photo and questions. Tell us who you are and why you want his advice. And until then, next Thursday, we will all have an exclusive consultation, but do have, in the meantime, a really enjoyable and a very safe week. Until then, goodbye.